Good morning, and welcome to the Church of the River here in beautiful downtown Memphis, Tennessee. My name is Sam Teitel, and I have the delight of serving this congregation as minister. Welcome to our worship service this morning. If this is your first time joining us, or if you are an old friend, welcome home. We are so glad to get to make this virtual worship service happen this morning. If you would like to learn more about what's going on in our congregation, about all of the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, and all about the several million Zoom meetings that we have every week, please stick around after the service today, and on your screen you will see some announcements that will let you know what's going on. If you would like to get email from us with updates, send an email to info@churchoftheriver.org and we can make that happen for you. And as always, to stay up to date on what is going on, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our worship service will now begin. So we've been doing this thing as part of our worship services where we have been trying to stay true to our Unitarian Universalist commitment to the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and to the sacred qualities of that search, by including as part of our service, as a blessing, information, factual, reliable information from a medical professional about things related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're going to keep doing that, but we're going to be expanding it a little bit to not just be medical information, but information that's related sort of generally to your wellness and to what you can be doing to help yourself and your family stay well and stay healthy in every sense during this time. So for this week's Wellness Minute, which is what we're now going to be calling it, I am very pleased to introduce Church of the River's own Dr. Jerry Billmeyer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jerry Billmeyer. I'm a retired pediatrician, and Reverend Sam has asked me to speak with you today about the general topic of nutrition. And I'm going to just give you a few suggestions on how to include your children in both meal planning and preparation of a meal. My advice would be to try to sit down for a family meal once a day, even if it's just 15 or 20 minutes, and then plan one special meal. Could be the weekend or whenever you choose, but a special meal that focuses on a particular cuisine that they may not have experienced. You might choose a country of origin such as Mexico, Italy, China, or even soul food. A few tips I'd give you in including the children in meal preparation would be to try to engage the senses, knowing that some small children are leery of new tastes. Let them smell the food as well while things are cooking. Touching the food, maybe washing the produce, the fruits, the vegetables, even the little ones can tear the lettuce leaf for a salad. Use your best effort to teach during cooking. The history of the recipe, if it's a foreign recipe or a family recipe. Measurements such as counting and fractions, and even converting from metric. Remember that cooking can enhance your family culture, and you might get out some of those old recipes from grandmother and introduce the children to some family cooking from way back. And finally, always ask for the children's input. Get them to suggest dishes for the meal, not just the main dish, but side dishes as well. And ask for their opinion and critiquing the meal afterwards. How did it go? Did they enjoy it, or should we scratch that meal? Building this daily or weekly cooking experience can strengthen family bonds and give a commitment to a healthy lifestyle for your family. And who knows, cooking with your children may turn out an adventuresome eater along the way. So stay safe, eat healthily, and stay well.
Let's all breathe. We gather, grateful for the bumps in the road, grateful for the trials and tribulations, for the heartbreaks and the headaches. We gather, grateful for the disappointments, grateful for the sense of failure that we have felt, grateful for the times when we have felt like there was nowhere to go. We gather grateful for the love and laughter. We gather grateful for the hands that we have held, grateful for the people who have held us. We gather grateful for everyone who has lifted us up, grateful for every chance we have had to lift up someone else. We gather grateful for the relationships that we have built with others, with ourselves, and with that which we believe to be beyond our comprehension. We gather grateful for all of the moments in our lives that have led us to this place on this day, that we may come together in worship. We light this chalice for the challenge of freedom, the goal of equality, and the warmth of community. May all who gather here offer and find the blessings of acceptance, loving kindness, and a grateful heart. Amen.
Streams of love and truth, the longing after something lost, the Spirit's yearning cry, the striving after better hopes. These things can never, these things can never, these things can Let nothing pass, for every hand must find some work to do. Lose not a chance to make and love. Be firm.
Good morning, friends. Our time for all ages this morning is a retelling of an ancient Greek myth as imagined by Faye Morganson in her book, Ancient Stories for Modern Times. I hope you like it. Long ago, when the world was so brand new that it was still shiny, the gods looked down at Earth. Suddenly they realized they'd made a terrible mistake. The gods themselves were a widely diverse group. Some were tall and thin, others were short and wide. Some had hair that was blonde and curly, others had hair that was dark and straight. More dramatically, some were male, others were female, and a few were a bit of both. Yet, when the gods made humans, they'd made only a single gender, only male. How boring was that? And what about their own sister, Aphrodite? They had forgotten to make a single human modeled on her qualities. How could they have made a mistake like that? So the gods got to work, carefully modeling and shaping the clay to look just like Aphrodite. They fussed and they worried. They wanted their new creation to be beautiful and good. They wanted her to be lovely and kind. When they were finally finished making the very first woman, she was gorgeous. When they breathed life into her, she was filled with goodness and passion. They called her Pandora, and they gave her a special and very challenging job. The gods wanted Pandora to keep guard over everything that was her opposite. They wanted her to keep all that was not beautiful and good, not lovely and kind, from entering the world. They took hatred, anger, greed, jealousy, despair, pain, illness, viruses, all that was evil, and plunged it into a big, beautifully decorated urn. They closed the urn with a tightly fitted cork and sealed it with wax. They gave the urn to Pandora and commanded her not to open it. They sent her off to live on Earth, where we humans dwell, and they rubbed their hands together in satisfaction. All was well and as it should be. Pandora would keep the lid on all the evils of the world. The gods could relax. Pandora placed the lovely urn in a corner of her room. For a while, she was so busy getting used to being alive that she forgot all about it. But now and then, when her eyes happened to drift to that corner of her room, she would wonder what was inside that urn and what would happen were she to open it. If you've ever been given a gift and told not to open it, wouldn't you be curious? Opening it just a crack, surely that wouldn't hurt. Should she do it? What do you think? One day she suddenly thought, why not? She opened it. And it was too late. The deed was done. Out flew darkness and fear, jealousy and anger, greed and hatred. All the evils flew out into the world. She tried to catch them and push them back into the urn. They moved with such force that Pandora could barely press the lid back down. It was impossible. It was hopeless. Or so it seemed at first. But as she sat there, wondering what to do, she heard something tinkling inside the urn. Something had not escaped. The sound was gentle. What was it? Pandora opened the urn just a crack more, and what she saw put a smile on her face. What she saw was a glimmer of hope. She opened the lid a little wider. Hope flew up and out into the world and spread its bright light everywhere. Surely, if hope can survive in an urn filled with all the evils in the world, then there is reason for all of us to feel hopeful. Remember, you are beloved, you are important, you are powerful. Go in peace.
Our first reading comes to us from Funny Weather, Art in an Emergency by Olivia Lang. Anyone who's spent time on the internet in the past few years will recognize how it feels to be caught up in paranoid reading. During my years on Twitter, I became addicted to the ongoing certainty that the next click, the next link would bring clarity. I believed that if I read every last conspiracy theory and threaded tweet, the reward would be illumination. I would finally be able to understand not only what was happening, but what it meant and what consequences it would have. But a definitive conclusion never came. I'd taken up residence in a hothouse for paranoia, a factory manufacturing speculation and mistrust. Our second reading comes to us from How to Sit by Thich Nhat Hanh. A Vietnamese student of mine studied English literature at Indiana University before returning to Vietnam and being ordained as a nun. As a nun, she was very active in trying to ease the suffering of people's daily lives. She was arrested by the police and put into prison because of her actions. She would practice sitting meditation in her prison cell. It was difficult because the guards saw her sitting as a provocative action. They thought she was defying them by sitting peacefully. She would wait until night when all the lights were off so she could sit like a free person. The people who put her in prison were trying to control her. She had to practice so she wouldn't lose her mind. Sitting like that gave her space in her heart. She also taught others who were incarcerated how to sit and breathe so that they would suffer less. In her outer form, she was caught in prison, yet she was completely free. If you can sit like that, the walls are not there. You are in touch with the whole universe. You have more freedom than people outside who are imprisoning themselves with their agitation and anger. People can try to steal many things from us, but they can't steal our determination and our practice. This morning, I'm really excited about the UU minister who's going to be leading our guest prayer. She is a brilliant and prophetic minister and a beloved friend of mine. I am very excited to welcome the Reverend Aisha Ansano to lead us in prayer this morning.
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, who is part of all that is and was and will be. We feel your presence in our midst, even when we cannot gather together physically. Hold our tender hearts, Spirit, as the news from the global to the personal breaks them. There is so much to hold in these times, so much to help each other carry. We hold in our hearts all who are sick, all who have lost loved ones in these times. We carry the sadness of the people and events and places that we have to miss, yearning to be with the ones we love. Help us to remember it is okay to grieve. It is okay to mourn, to recognize that which has changed, that which is difficult in these times in the world today. And Holy One, we know that even in the midst of difficult times, there are always moments of joy. Help us to recognize these moments when they come, whether they seem small or large, and to take the time in our lives for gratitude, even amidst it all. For sunbeams pouring through our windows, for a bite of something delicious, the smiling face of a friend on the screen in front of us, and all the bright moments we encounter. We give thanks, we lift them up, and we hold on to them when joy is harder to find. Spirit, be with us as we hold all the complexities of life, as we move through the world in the only way that we know how, moment by moment. May we feel held and loved by our communities, and may we find moments of rest and moments of joy amidst everything. We take a deep breath in and let it out and say, Amen.
like to support the work that we are doing here at Church of the River for our church community and for our wider Memphis community, you are invited to do so at this time by following the instructions that you will see on your screen. The offertory for the care and sustenance of this congregation and its work will now be graciously given and received. A few days ago, my wife Sandra and I were taking a walk, and we're having the conversation that I feel like everybody has been having lately, which is, out of everything that has been closed or postponed or canceled because of COVID-19, what do you miss the most? And this isn't a helpful conversation to have, right? Like, everyone knows this is not really going to make anybody feel better, but you just can't help but have the conversation sometimes. So we're talking about what we miss, and what just kind of fell out of my mouth without me even thinking about it was, I miss walking around the mall. And so, like, I'm not particularly proud of that answer, right? Because I'm supposed to be like a religious leader. So I'm supposed to only be interested in places that are kind of, spiritual. But that's the answer that I gave. I miss walking around the mall. And I stand by that answer because I do. I love malls. I spent a lot of my adolescence and young adulthood as a mall employee. And so even now, malls feel weirdly comforting to me. Right? Because a mall is so mass-produced. It's so impersonal, that they look basically the same no matter where you go. So I know that wherever I am, at least in this country, I can walk into a shopping mall and look around and think, I know where I am. I know how this place works. I know what these stores and restaurants sell. I probably even know the basic personality types of most of the people who work in these stores and restaurants, right? And that's really helpful when the rest of the world is confusing and difficult, right? Even if I don't know what tomorrow will bring, I know that I can go to the mall and go to Auntie Annie's and get a pretzel, and it will be better than the pretzels from Pretzel Time, and the guy who serves it to me will probably have a weird neck tattoo, right? It's about certainty. It's about stability. And so I've been missing malls lately, right? When things are so confusing and tough, and of course, the malls are closed, or at least should be closed, despite whatever misguided reopening plans might be going on. And, so many of our beloved sources of hope and contentment have had to be shut down in the past couple of months, right? I'm thinking about concerts and cafes and parks and, different kinds of entertainment venues, not to mention, churches. But it's interesting to me to see, people are so intent on reopening everything. And part of that is because, people want their jobs back, of course, but I think people also want this because they want the opportunity to return to the places that they know and love and do the things that they know and love doing. And so I've been wondering about what this moment that we are in can offer us in terms of finding ways to reach a place of contentment within ourselves that is less dependent on things like location and circumstance, and has more to do with the ways in which we value ourselves. Right? There's nothing good about this pandemic, but there can be good things about our responses to it. There can be good in the meaningful work that we do on ourselves while we are staying in our houses. This can be a time when we make deeper connections with all that is beyond us, with our spiritual practices and with our families, and begin to build identities for ourselves and sources of meaning for ourselves that come from within, not from without. I'm thinking about this story that we read this morning by Thich Nhat Hanh, where he talks about a Buddhist nun that he knows who was imprisoned by her government for the justice work that she was doing. Thich Nhat Hanh describes how this woman was able to be free even as she was imprisoned and confined, because she was able to breathe and meditate and engage with her spiritual practice. And she was able to teach the people around her to engage with that same practice. This is how she was able to resist despair. I think about this, and I think about the words of another great source of spiritual wisdom, the California ska punk band Operation Ivy, who once famously said, "To resist despair in this world is what it is to be free." The story about this imprisoned Buddhist nun is an extreme example, but her story does have something to teach us about our current situation, because this is a moment when all of us are being asked to build an identity and a practice that is largely independent from our ability to participate in what is going on in the outside world. And many of us are still trying to participate in the world and do what we can to stay connected, and that is a positive thing. There's nothing wrong with keeping ourselves informed and employed, or with spending money. But this is a moment when we can reimagine the roles that those activities play in our lives. And we can begin to fill our lives with things that will ultimately be a more stable foundation for our spiritual and emotional health. And this is work that was already important for us to do. It just has taken on a deeper meaning now, right? Like, I will always tell you, just like in the Olivia Lang reading, I'll always tell you should spend less time on Twitter. No matter how little time you already spend on Twitter, that's already a good idea. But now, in the situation that we're in, it just has a different level of urgency to it. And of course, this is much easier said than done. But, I've been brainstorming for these past few days and trying to think of some concrete steps that we can take to help us resist despair during this time and perhaps reimagine our understanding of what it is to be content and at peace and free. So I've come up with a list of 3 things that I think, would at least be worth it for us to try. The first is to be kind to yourself and do what works for you. Look, I'm going to be totally real with you. Meditation does not work for me. I have tried and tried. I love the idea of meditation. I love reading about meditation. I love reading Buddhist texts like the one that we read as a part of this very service. But for me, my spiritual fulfillment comes from different places. My sense of fulfillment recently has come from getting up early every morning and taking long walks around my neighborhood with my wife and my dog. And also I've been doing some creative writing projects that I've promised myself that the congregation I serve will never see. Right now, I've just been sitting down and writing because I want to, and removing the pressure of ever having to preach it. It's been glorious. And I've also been buying a lot of stupid things online because I want to support independent businesses, I guess, and also because I'm an American and I like buying stupid things online. Sandra and I were watching this program together on TV this past week called Graduate Together, where President Obama gave a commencement speech to all of America's graduating seniors, and he talked about the importance of doing what is right instead of just what feels good. And he was right to say that, and he was right to make the criticisms that he made. But because I'm a minister and not a politician, I also get to tell you that sometimes it is also okay and even good to do what feels good, right? Provided that what makes you feel good is not going to harm you or other people, right? It's still a bad idea to abuse alcohol and drugs or to spend days on end watching Netflix. But I think about how the Buddhist nun in our story felt best meditating. And all of us have different spiritual paths that we will walk to get us to a better place. This also feels like a good time to mention that just about every person who I've talked to in the past couple months has first told me how upset they are about the situation that we're in, and then immediately followed it up with, but of course, this is much worse for other people, and I get that, and I just have to be grateful for what I have and all that, and stop that. It is okay to feel how you are feeling. Right? Perspective is always a good thing to have, but denying yourself the right to grieve will not make your grief go away. It will only make your grief less accessible to you, and then your grief will become much harder for you to manage. Part of being good to yourself is letting yourself grieve. We are all in a horrible situation. And your emotions about the situation are real, and they deserve to be seen and to be honored. The second thing that I'd encourage you to try is to make friends with reality, because we are in a situation that is so painful that it can be really tempting to just try and will it away. This is why, we have so many wild theories circulating online about what's really going on. Maybe this virus isn't real. Maybe this is a conspiracy. Maybe it's aliens. And I get it, right? It would be much easier if this wasn't real, right? The Buddhist nun that Thich Nhat Hanh describes would have had a much easier time if she wasn't really locked up by her government. Our work is to find joy and love and fulfillment in the world as it is now. Even if we may feel trapped and confined, there is always joy to be found if you're willing to look for it. To resist despair, to be free, in the moment that we are in is to stop defining hope as the belief that things will eventually get back to normal, and to redefine hope as being about getting to a place where our sense of identity and security is not tied up in the need for things to change, but has become solidified within us to the point where our hope is not dependent on when we will be able to go back to the barber shop again, but is based in a love and an acceptance of ourselves as we are, however we are. And number 3 is to make friends with the unknown. This week, a letter went out to most of the Unitarian Universalist community from the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who is the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And in this letter, she told Unitarian Universalist congregations that we should be prepared, and pay attention to that word, prepared. She said we should be prepared to continue to have our services online until about a year from now. And of course, the UU internet went absolutely bananas, and people started bellowing either about how this was clearly false and coronavirus will obviously be gone in a month, or about how this is clearly true, and anybody who disagrees with this advice from the UUA is probably a Trump-supporting ignoramus. But everybody seemed to just latch on to the timeline that Susan presented as though it had been an ironclad timeline. But the thing is, Susan said prepare for another year without in-person services. She did not say that a year of worshiping online was definitely going to happen. And in fact, she said a whole bunch of times that there are so many unknowns and many things that could happen this year that could change the situation greatly. The nature of this crisis is such that it is very hard to know what will happen in the future, especially with so many unpredictable factors in play, like states reopening in different ways at different times, and politicians whose motivations are uncertain and ever-changing. We are still in a position where we know very, very little. As I keep saying, like a broken record, many very brilliant people have written articles insisting that this pandemic will end every single month between now and the end of time, because it feels much better to have an end date, even if that end date is heartbreakingly far away, because it gives us a sense of control, and it feels better to have control, right? I like walking around the mall because that's where I feel like I am in control, like I am in an environment where the rules make sense to me and I can predict what's going to happen next. But as Unitarian Universalists, it has always been our spiritual path to embrace the unknown and to lean into the idea that there is very, very little that we can be sure that we know and understand. I think about this Buddhist nun who, despite being of a different faith, can be an amazing role model for Unitarian Universalist in this time. Think of her sitting there in her cell, unsure of what tomorrow would bring, but doing her breathing and her meditation and working towards a sense of connectedness and satisfaction in the moment that she was in the place that she was in. Many of us come to this church on Sunday mornings when we're allowed to be in the building. We come here and we look out at this beautiful view of this beautiful river, and we are amazed by its vastness and its power. And we look at the river and we think about how limitless our world and our universe is, and how very little we know or control about all that is. Unitarian Universalism is a faith that has intentionally moved away from dogma that insists that it knows all the answers. Right? We believe that if there are any answers at all, they are probably not the same answers for everybody. Unitarian Universalist faith at its core is all about being present and grounded in a state of uncertainty and allowing that uncertainty to be what feeds and comforts us. So the theological challenge of the moment that we are in is at its heart a deeply Unitarian Universalist challenge. Unitarian Universalism is not about charting the river. It is about jumping into the river and allowing it to take you somewhere that you cannot predict. Amen. Go. Encounter the world at its ugliest until you find beauty. Go. Encounter the world at its cruelest until you find compassion. Go. Encounter yourself at your worst until you find that you are a beloved child of God. Go in peace, and amen.
Talk with